morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the IBM Champions Chat Livestream, wherever you are in the world. Goodness gracious, I'm having one of those days. This is how you know it's live watching and not pre-recorded. So here we go. The IBM Champions program is a recognition, reward, and catalyze program for non-IBMers who are as invested and passionate and excited about various IBM technologies as the people who work for IBM are. Sometimes they're even more knowledgeable, but don't tell anyone I said that. The folks that we have with us today are going to talk to you about the program itself, about the technology they work with, and about what has made them the best of the best in the Champions program, Lifetime Champions. So, I'm Libby Ingracia. I run the program worldwide. We have 600 champions in 48 countries around the world. And I have with me today 3 great IBM champions that I'm going to introduce you to right now. And actually, to be more correct, I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Lester, do you want to get us started?
Hi, yes, I'm Lester Knudsen. I've been working with IBM Informix databases since 1983. It's really an honor to be named IBM Champion this year. I'm president of Advanced Data Tools. We specialize in very large database consulting. And I'm also a big advocate of user groups. I was the founder of the Washington area Informix user group. Before that, I cut my teeth on the Capital PC area user group back in the days. And then also way before that, Martin may know this one, is I was in Toronto and got to participate a bit in the PC user group up there. But I was also one of the founding members of the International Informix user group. Great to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, Lester. Thank you so much. Paul, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Martin, you can follow Paul.
Yeah, hi, I'm Paul Cordelesi. I'm the SIS administrator for FileNet for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City. And I've been working with this suite of tools since 1989. I've absolutely been involved in all of the user groups that have been available at both the national level when FileNet was at the national, and now I am president of the New York user group. I've also been fortunate enough to have been invited to present at various conferences. And the idea of a champion program to me is such a wonderful opportunity for us to give back to the community as servants in many respects. And I look forward to each of you looking into this as an opportunity that you wish to pursue.
Okay, did you want me to start?
Yeah, go right ahead, Martin.
All right.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. My name is Martin Hubble, or Hubel. I've been working with DB2 since 1985. I started getting involved with user groups and industry associations in about 1983. We helped start the Central Canada DB2 user group in the fall of 1985, and I got involved with Guide International, which is still going in Europe as Guide Share. But I was involved with that for about 9 years. Then the International DB2 User Group started up in 1989. I was a speaker at the inaugural conference, and I think I've done about 60 or 70 presentations over the last 30 some odd years for them. They started a program called the Gold Consultant Program in 1994. I was a member of that. And along the way, I also run something called the DB2 Night Show. I've been hosting that since 2012, along with Scott Hayes, who's another lifetime champion, but Scott's left the night show, so I'm doing both DB2 on ZOS as well as DB2 LUW. So I'm busy with that. And somebody told me a long time ago when I got into this, the more you put in, the more you get out when it comes to user groups. And that is absolutely the case. The recognition provided by the Champion program was great. They let me in I got into the Champion program in 2008, and now I'm a lifetime champion. So apparently the major advantage I have there is I don't have to do paperwork to become a champion each year. And that's a great thing because I love paperwork, not. So back to you, Libby.
Well, there were a couple of things that even just your introduction made me think. First of all, I want to let our listeners know that these gentlemen that you're meeting here today, they're not just champions, right? As you've heard, they're lifetime champions. And so, part of what you're hearing is about your long association with the user groups and the events and the program and the products and the user groups that came before the ones that you're in now. But I really want to make sure that our listeners know that they don't have to have been working on a product for 20 plus years or been part of a user group for 20 plus years to be an IBM champion. Maybe it would be interesting for you guys to talk about, how you sort of first came into the champion program, and what kind of made that jump for you from just being an expert to being the one who shared or ran the user group or was, a champion. Paul, you want to start us? Looks like you've got something to say.
Sure. I remember that moment quite clearly. I was at Think or Wow or Insight, whatever the annual name was at the time, quite a few years ago, and there was this presentation up on the big screen showing faces, and this woman, Libby, started speaking, and there were these faces of people that were doing presentations at the event, and they were IBM champions. And I looked at them and picked out their talks to attend and was so impressed with the quality of their presentation and the depth of their knowledge, but also their deep interest in conveying that knowledge. And I was like, I want that. And so I started hunting down how to become a champion, and the rest is history.
I love that story, Paul. I mean, I'm a little embarrassed about being, up on the big screens at Think and Interconnect and Wow and all the things that preceded that. But I'm super pleased that you went to those sessions. That's exactly why we try to do those things at conferences. Even in this virtual world, y'all know that, when you do a conference or, one of the online user groups or whatever, we try to post, the champion icon, or we try to say it at our website so that folks know, if you go to share, if you go to IBM community virtual community days, if you go to iDoug, if you go to whatever, these are the champions who are speaking, and you are all just that little step above. You're awesome. Now, I think that about all of you, but
I was going to say,
Martin,
thank you, Libby.
You're so welcome, Lester. But, Martin, I think, what was your first step in? How did you get to start doing the DB Tonight show, and how did you make that jump?
Well, I was with an insurance company actually based in Manhattan, a New York Life Insurance Company. And the people at my manager and the CIO of the company believed that if they could let the world know they had good people, we could attract other good people to the company. We were starting a New York Canadian head office. And so my manager said, go to Guide and become a project manager. Well, I actually turned out to be the assistant project manager on DB2 system administration. And as time went on, I took on the project manager role there. Those were back in the days when I started not only working with companies and going to other companies just based on the job situation, et cetera, but I also ended up working for smaller firms where I had to make friends with other companies just to be able to continue to go. And I literally went to 3 conferences a year for about 9 years running, 27 guides before that conference started to shut down. And there were other pressures, things like the DB2 Tech conferences came along, and I was speaking at them in addition to other, we've mentioned things. There was information on demand and all of those conferences, but the idea of getting involved and seeing how much more you could learn if you would actually just share your opinions and work on papers. And back in the 80s, we were writing all sorts of, they're now called red books, but we were doing that before red books existed. As a bunch of users with a lot of IBM help. We always had an IBM advisor on every book, but we did that. And just the ability to learn and the contacts I've made. I've done DB2 work now in 32 countries and 37 states. So, I've got friends. I've got all of these friends in all these places. It's really great when I put my Facebook and my birthday comes up. I get people from Australia and Japan and all sorts of places around the world that are quite happy to wish me a happy birthday, and other friends I phone up and talk to from time to time in other countries. It really is a global community. It's been a lot of fun.
It's funny, Martin, all of you, I think if I weren't running this program, I would want to be an IBM champion. My history, my origin story with it is so similar, to y'all's. I helped run user groups. I ran an international user group. I wrote blogs. I wrote books. I spoke at conferences. Mm-hmm. This is way back when. We're not going to talk about how long ago it is, but back when I was, sort of the technologist, but this program didn't exist then. But I feel like I sort of have pieces of what you've been saying you get out of it, Martin, with, friends all over the world, and not just wishing you happy birthday and stuff, but you really, anywhere I travel in the world, there's probably someone I can have a drink with or a coffee with or connect with, somebody to give me advice on any technology I want to work with. I think you've hit on what I consider the primary, and we'll talk about benefits in a minute, but what I've always considered the primary benefit of being an IBM champion. Yeah, there's some concrete things that we give y'all, but for me, the connection among you all and watching you work together and answer each other's questions and help each other and give each other business or, whatever it is, that connection to me is the most valuable thing that I see.
I was going to jump in on this. When I first got started with user groups, IBM PC had just come out. And I was helping a nonprofit get set up with it. They had a donor who said, we'll get you a PC. As we're walking out of the computer store, the salesman sort of called me over and said, by the way, we have this secret meeting at the library here tonight, and we'll have source code there. And so I went. Source code back then was a dot matrix printout, badly Xeroxed. And it was the best thing ever because that forced me to learn it. You had to go home and type it all in and learn this bad. But I got so much out of that just sort of inspired me that's why I want to get involved. And, I've been involved in user groups ever since then. Yeah. And to me, it's all about sharing stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was in a computer club in 1970.
Wow.
Time ago.
I think user groups, not all champions come into the program via user groups, but a huge percentage do. Probably, I would say more than 60% of champions are involved in some way or another with either an in-person, usually in-person user group or, somewhere where they're answering questions in forums or where they're, like in a persistent chat or a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group or something around the technology. And I think the thing that says about champions and about what user groups mean is just what I've noticed is the single defining factor is that you guys are all willing to not just be great at the technology, but to help other people be great at the technology, to share when I used to go to user groups all the time, a lot of what we did there was, wow, we had this problem at this company, that I'm in, or at this client that I'm working for, and here's how we finally fixed it. Or, here's what IBM or whatever other company told us, was underlying it and what to do to get around it, and just sharing that knowledge. And I think that's still what you see out there, right?
Yeah, and I think it's changed a lot. The two most interesting ones I'm part of right now are on WhatsApp. And they're people from all over the world. I wake up every morning and I've got all these new messages of WhatsApp from all over the world. A lot of them questions, a lot of them great answers. And you say, well, why don't you come to something like this? They don't have time to, but it works. I think user groups have really changed dramatically in this age.
The other thing I find is that if you get involved with a user group and you have to work with people in organizing things and also in presenting, you really have to have your thoughts together. Like I do a lot of teaching. I've been teaching courses since 1987. And before you can teach somebody, you got to learn it. And if people can help you learn it, and then you can help other people learn, you're far better off. It's the idea of I had an IBM manager I worked with back in the early 80s, and he said he had been a manager within IBM, and then he became a system engineer, customer rep. And I said, didn't you like managing more? And he says, well, the only difference is when I was a manager, I serviced my employees, and now I service my customers. And it's the attitude of helping people, and that was quite influential to hear somebody say, all I'm here to do is help.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's what I see champions do is help so much. It's interesting. Lester, I love that you brought up the WhatsApp. I think a lot of people use it, but probably equally a lot of people don't know about it. Do you want to talk just a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a mobile phone app. It's on all the different phone operating systems. And it's basically like a text message in real time. You type in a question, you get an answer. It is really interesting. And
how would people find like the WhatsApp that you're part of, some of these groups that are kind of user groups via WhatsApp?
I felt like I found it by accident. It was somebody invited me. Somebody else I knew invited me. And most of them are they are controlled, so you have to get an invitation or be approved. It's not like a free form bulletin board, but they're all really good. There are a couple for the Informix database that I'm part of, and it's fun getting up in the morning and seeing questions and comments and answers from people all over the world, because it's very active at night. It's a 24-hour thing. It doesn't stop.
Yeah, I mean, I have a WhatsApp group, for like my PTO that I'm part of, my parent organization with my twins. But I love, I remember a couple of years ago there were some persistent Skype chats, and now there's also, I think, some Slack channels where people gather to answer these kinds of questions. But I don't think that those and I know this isn't really a community call, but community is, so much at the base of what we do. I think those are additive to user groups, don't you? I mean, I still think that, like iDoug and IIUG and all of your other both local and virtual, international user groups are still pertinent, and you're still involved in those, right? Even beyond this sort of micro way of connecting.
I think all the other user groups are evolving, and we don't know what they're going to evolve into yet. And I think these are microcosms of what they could evolve into. But you imagine having a user group where in real time you could ask a question and get an answer.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, it's awesome.
We've had the DB2 list server run through iDoug for years, where you send an email and get an answer back, and that's been great. But as you're saying, Lester, it's really cool that they moved that to a new platform with WhatsApp and other things. And
well, that has really surprised me, because I was a big advocate of the list servers.
yeah,
And they actually, traffic seems to be going down on them compared to WhatsApp and things like that, which I still haven't got my mind around.
Well, I mean, I think we're also inundated with email. If as you all know, as champions, sometimes I can't even keep up with just the email that y'all send to me. And I think everybody's, in that same universe. So it seems like the nice thing about the WhatsApp or whatever is it's not yet overloaded. I'm starting to feel like I'm getting overloaded on it, but we're not overloaded yet. So you guys all talked about briefly in your introductions some of the things that you sort of see as your core champion activities. Do you want to go a little bit more into, what you do to share, as well as, I mean, I know we've been talking about the WhatsApp and the user groups. Are there other things that either you do or that you see folks, other champions doing, that you want to kind of make our listeners aware of as core champion activities?
Well, I'll jump in on that one, because I just finished a free set of Informix database tutorials. It's 16 hours of free videos that someone can go get, and I'll put the link in the chat. But to me, that's a key thing, is how do you provide information for people? And it's like, I get questions all the time from folks saying, how do I get started with this? And that was one of the motivating things to put together this video series on it. And I went and looked at the analytics on our company website. The number one question people were looking for was tutorials. And this is the other trend, is people go to YouTube and look for tutorials. I got a new firewall 2 weeks ago, and instead of opening up the manual, I went to YouTube and said,
right,
okay, who can teach me how to set up this firewall? That to me is part of what's going on.
One of our other Lifetime Champions, new Lifetime Champions, Morag Hewson, who's an expert in MQ, she likes to say that if she has to answer a question more than once, if she's asked the same question more than once, that's her cue to either write a blog about it or do a video about it or do a tutorial about it. And I think that, first of all, I think that impetus is what makes a champion, right? The desire to do that sharing or those tutorials or that knowledge. Paul, Martin, what do you guys think?
So I think one of the key aspects of the champion program, and I think what embodies each of us, is that we're not the ones who are sitting in the audience listening to somebody else's innovation. We are the ones who have taken the risk, and in many respects, there's a risk involved when you get up out of your quiet little anonymous seat and go up to the podium. And that podium is either in front of a group of people, or that podium is WhatsApp, or any one of a series of these other tools, which seem to be more every single year, more opportunities for the communication. But I think that's probably the single greatest distinction. Technically, there are a lot of very, very technical, very skilled people in our industry, thank goodness. But what sets the champions apart is that we have a willingness and almost, I use the word obligation, to stand up and share our knowledge. And it regardless of the way that we share it, our interest is in sharing that knowledge, in moving the ball a little bit farther rather than watching somebody else move the ball.
yeah,
Nice. I like that. I like the idea of taking a risk, because it is a little bit of a risk that we take as champions, as speakers, And I think that willingness to be brave and take that risk is definitely important. Martin, what did you want to say?
Oh, I just wanted to say the same, more of the same, really. It does take something to get up in front of a group of people. In fact, I think there was a survey done many years ago that basically said that one of the things that people are most afraid of is standing up in front of a group of people and sharing their ideas, because as soon as you open your mouth, you're subject to criticism. You might find some great fans, but the idea of being willing to share, and actually I've got a little story. I was speaking at a conference in Tromsø, Norway, which is up in the Arctic Circle. It was a great time. And there was this woman, she's an IBMer from Finland, and she's got to speak this entire thing in English. She's presenting application programming standards for performance that the Finnish user group had worked on for a couple of years. But she was so nervous, I just looked at the information and said, you could fall on your face and people would love to see this information. You're going to have a great time and people are going to love you. And absolutely that was true. And after that, every 2 years until 2013, I ended up going to Helsinki to teach classes for them. So talk about just being a real nice person and having it paid back in spades. Helsinki is a fantastic city, by the way. Add it to your list.
Yep. That's funny. We just started doing an article where we asked people where they liked to go to conferences, what the best cities were for conferences. So I'm going to add Helsinki to that list and tell them that you said so.
Yeah.
What were you going to say? I'm sorry, I interrupted.
I would stand behind that. I also got a chance to go to Sweden as well, and I've got a number of good friends in both Finland and Sweden. And I just love the Nordics. They're just the best people, and they're loyal IBM customers up there. There's a great IBM following in that part of the world.
Beautiful. Paul, did you want to say something?
So I'm just going to echo something that was mentioned earlier. This idea that if you're going to take the risk and go to the podium, you have to really understand what it is that you're going to talk about. And I've used that incentive in the past. You know, I would submit a proposal to think for a talk in 6 months, and I may not have been 100% knowledgeable at that point that I submitted the proposal. But I knew that with that deadline, if I had 150 people who were paying good money to come hear what I had to say, that I had to be on the top of my game, and it was wonderfully motivating in this kind of, here comes the cliff, do you know how to fly by the time that cliff is coming? And you can't stop it because it's the day that you said you were going to do it.
I think that's really interesting. You know, a lot of people have a little imposter syndrome in terms of speaking at conferences, in terms of, you know, writing blogs, in terms of nominating themselves to be an IBM champion. And I think one of the things that you said there, well, two things really that it makes me think about. Number one, you don't have to be the biggest, best, know absolutely everything about it to put yourself out there. You have to have done your research and you have to know it by the time you get up there. But it's okay to not be perfect, to have to say, well, that's a good question. We're going to have to look that up and I'll let you know. That bravery counts for something. You have to be an expert overall, but that bravery, that willingness to try definitely counts in getting yourself up there. And the other thing that it made me think about was, I used that technique myself back in my speaking days of, I know a lot of what there is to know about. Back there, I was working on, Notes and Domino or Exchange or NT or, those kinds of things. And I was teaching, and it was definitely okay, so I'm now going to talk about this new feature. I'll put my session in, and then I've got to really get all the knowledge and get all the learning and go to all the different forums and read all the, blogs and write all the blogs to make sure that I, talked about it. So I want to encourage, I guess, folks who might not be already speakers, or who might be thinking that they have, that maybe, gosh, am I good enough to be a champion or to be a speaker, to take those risks?
Well,
Another element,
yeah.
I think speaking is not everything. It's sharing code. And, what got me into user groups first was somebody sharing a bad dot matrix printer, source code.
Great
And a
point.
lot of times I think, you don't have to get up in front and speak, but it's the willingness to share code and snippets of code, and it doesn't have to even be a whole program, but an idea in a snippet of code can help so much.
Lester, that's such a good point. Yeah.
One of my colleagues has just one little story on this, has something called a buffer turnover ratio that he's put together a snippet of code to calculate. And it calculates how many times per hour do your buffers in the database turn over. And to me, that is one of the most brilliant pieces of code. I've used it. It's out there in the public domain. I love it. And so it's not just speaking, but it's also sharing code and sharing actions.
Yeah, I mean, I think even for folks who aren't developers or DAs, or who aren't coding, you can share a tip. You can share a product that you're liking or trying out. Just sharing your experience, I think, where whatever platform. I think you're exactly right that you don't have to be a speaker to be a champion, or to be doing champion activity.
Yeah.
And the other side of this too is, what does this, it's one thing to talk about sharing with the community, but what does it mean to you as an individual? If you're a champion, it means you've gone away, you've helped people, you've developed expertise. It makes you more valuable to the organizations that you work for or serve. And it makes you the last guy that's going to get fired, if you have to worry about that in this industry. And it also means that you're the most employable should something happen and you need to go look for another job.
So one of the questions that's come up, and I think this kind of relates just to what you were saying, Martin, that pay it forward attitude of sharing. How do you feel that has impacted or enriched your individual careers? And, has that made a difference beyond just making you a champion? Has that taken you new places in some way?
32 countries. That's the only answer I'm going to say.
I like that answer. That's a great answer.
Well,
I was.
Go ahead, Paul.
No,
then Lester.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul.
In my case, what it's done, which was utterly unexpected, was within my firm, I had people starting to think of me as not just the FileNet expert, but because I was doing talks on automated system monitoring within FileNet, then I was then an expert on system monitoring, regardless of what it was. And so that has forced me to try to look at a bigger picture and not just within my little technical silo. The other thing that's come out of this from a pay it forward perspective is helping others who have been looking for jobs. And since we all know each other, over and over and over again, I've had folks come up to me at these conferences, and it's easier in conferences, though I'm sure it can also happen in chat rooms. But I've had people come up saying, "Look, they're outsourcing my department. I've got 6 months. What do you know?" And we have managed over and over and over again to find employment opportunities, not necessarily just in my firm, but in other firms that we're all connected with. So you may go and perceive of yourself as an expert in one particular area, but then it grows and grows on itself like a snowball.
I was going to add, one of the things I feel like it's like being a master craftsman and you have apprentices. And one of the things that gives me the best satisfaction is seeing someone who I've mentored and worked with over the years go do something phenomenal. Right now, in fact, that is more satisfying than me doing it. It's like me, I should be expected to do that. But he goes out or she goes out and does that. That is just awesome. And I think that's the other part of playing it forward is to see those that you've been able to work with go out and do their own successful stuff.
That's so interesting. The idea of champions as not just broadly willing to share information, but willing to be sort of more direct mentors, and supporting other people in their careers. I think that's again, you don't have to be a speaker to be a mentor, right? That was part of what you were saying earlier. Do you think that mentoring is taking the place of some of maybe the traditional higher ed that's maybe out of reach for people, or that is or other ways of learning?
I think it adds to it. I'm not going to say take the place, but I would say enhances it. I used to run, and we had many summers would have college interns come in for the summer, and I always loved it. At the end of the summer or the next year when they went out and got a real job, and I was like, I'd be a reference for them. That is really, I think, just makes you feel good that you've been able to help someone do that. And it doesn't replace higher ed; it helps it.
Yeah, and I know so many of our champions are involved in. They're involved in higher ed, or they're involved in additional training past higher ed, where there are courses or training or helping folks to learn to get their start in technology.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm sure all of us are involved to a greater or lesser degree. I'm on the intern steering committee for Sloan Kettering, and what we do with this is we try to develop within the students who come to us with a very academic perspective on problems, and we try to pull them slightly away from the academia and into real world problems. And it's a broad range of things that are different when you get out in the real world. I would love to be back in college and be a student with tenure and just continue on with that. But eventually you have to pay the bill, and it can sometimes be a bit of a shock to these students when they enter into the real world and they start interacting with business, and they start interacting, for example, with file sizes that are perhaps a little bit bigger than the sample things that they wrote their sort programs against. It's wonderful to kind of push the little birdie out of the nest and watch them learn how to fly before they go splat.
So that's a very evocative metaphor there.
Everybody goes splat. What's even better is to see them pick themselves up and do it again.
Absolutely. It's not bad to go splat. And in fact, you hear a lot that you don't perhaps know everything. You haven't learned everything that you can learn if you never go splat. That the being, it goes back to that being brave that we were talking about, but in sort of a different dimension. If you don't go splat, you're not stretching, you're not trying, you're not learning new things. And speaking of kind of new things, like, talk to me for just a minute about the new technology, the new products, the new ways of approaching products that have been around for a while that you guys are seeing out there, and how that relates to your life as a champion.
Well, with DB2, this we kind of tried to figure out after about 10 years of DB2 being out. And I had a conversation with a good friend at a conference, and we came to the conclusion in the mainframe world that DB2 was changing 4 times faster than any other mainframe product that IBM had ever introduced. And the ability to try to keep up with that, I mean, the things that are just get added into, like DB2 and Linux, Unix, Windows, they've added new things to it. All of the JSON stuff is all part of the database. The XML stuff, they didn't bring out another XML database. They integrated that into DB2. The DB2 people were infinitely smart when they stole a bunch or borrowed a bunch of stuff from Informix, because Informix has an awful lot of great stuff in it. But the product itself just continues to grow and change, and we have to, this week or the last few months, we've been talking about graph and graph databases now, and using that approach, and REST. REST has been around for a few years now, but it's still new enough that people look upon that as being new. And we have to continue to learn. This has been it really is this matter of lifelong learning. You can learn a lot by teaching. You can learn a lot just by paying attention and getting bruises from time to time, falling over and getting back up and trying again.
I was going to say one of the most valuable things the Champion program has been for me is access to the cloud stuff you've been doing. I was on your call earlier today on that, and so this is where the future is going. I just did this for a client. They did a cloud migration from one cloud to another. So it's not migrating to the cloud, but you're going to have stuff in the future where how do you get from one cloud to another and things like that. To me, that's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and we can talk about, have a question a little bit about what's valuable about the Champion program in a minute, but I'm glad to know always one of the things that we do for the champions as a benefit of the program is that we try to give you all briefings on all kinds of, technologies and programs and products and offerings that IBM is working on, from, things that we're working on in open source to brand new products to, pre-release information about, roadmaps and things like that. And the thing that I love to hear about that when it happens is how that triggers folks to try something new. The champions to try something new, or gets an idea in your head about, ooh, well, I saw it's available in this product. Now, could we bring that into what I'm working with? Things like that. So making those connections. And Paul, I think I jumped in while you were going to say something.
I forgot what I was going to say.
And I'm going to echo Libby on this. One of the key benefits that I've seen is this idea of access and exposure, just like you said, to things that I wouldn't have normally known about. And in my particular world, my product line is moving to the cloud. My product line is moving to Linux. And so there are opportunities to learn about these moves that I wouldn't have been exposed to if I had not been involved in this. And so I've got a little bit of a leg up on the rest of the competition in that I'm already looking down the road at these expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's transition and talk just a little bit about the IBM Champion program for a moment. And can you tell me sort of what your number one benefit has been, what has made you come back to the program year after year and want to be part of it, or want to bring in someone new?
Getting to know people like Martin and Scott and Paul, to me is the big benefit, is to be able to, there's another IBM champion locally up in Baltimore, being able to call him up and say, I have a DB2 question. And I know him from that. That has been great.
Yeah, connections.
Paul
or Martin? Yeah.
Connections, recognition, the ability to know somebody in IBM who can get me an answer. If I'm stuck, I know so many IBMers, and including you, Libby, that I can say, I've got a customer with this problem, or I've come up with this problem. How do I approach this problem to help me move on quicker than just sitting here spinning my wheels? it's one thing to have your own bumps and bruises. We call that learning. But the other side is occasionally it doesn't hurt to have a bit of a helping hand, you know.
Right.
And
yeah, and
Go ahead.
And to me, it is that sense of community, that you have a group of 600 like-minded individuals who, regardless of the technology that they support, we all come at this from the same perspective. And so it's like a family that is 600 strong across all kinds of technologies in all kinds of languages from all kinds of backgrounds that enhances this whole orchestra, this whole chorus that we're all part of. And to me, that's the most exciting. You know, there's nothing I look forward to more than seeing the smiling face of the other champions when I bumble into the room and we're all there together and we all know each other and we all sit in on on each other's chats trying to learn that little thing that this person is an expert on.
Yeah, I definitely think that, I'll speak to, from the programmatic side, obviously there's benefits like conference discounts and, gift packages like these nice shirts that you see Paul and Lester wearing and the bottle that you see Lester drinking out of and things like that. But those are, those are a way for IBM to say thank you to the champions for all, and the bottle that we've got Martin drinking out of there. That's definitely a way that we say thank you. But I've always felt like the truest benefit was the camaraderie and the connections inside and outside IBM. One of the things I think, Lester, that you said that really made me think is, you were talking about, now I don't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think of, people come into the program through one way, like either they, maybe work in community or write a blog or, something like that. But then once you're in the program, you get different kinds of opportunities. Sometimes things like giving feedback, design feedback for the products, being beta users of the products, we've got folks who are sponsor users for brand new products coming out where, you have an expertise in APIs. So as there's something new being launched, the IBM team launching it comes to the champion program and says, hey, Libby, do you have champions who have expertise in APIs? And I'm like, sure. And then you guys are always so generous with your time and energy. And you go back to those folks and you're like, oh yeah, so this and this and this is what's important. And you don't even just bring your own feedback, you bring the feedback of that whole community that you've got access to. And I think that is, it's one of the things that I think that the champions give to IBM, to make it that sort of two-way street.
Yeah, there is a lot of back and forth, and the other aspect is through the years, I've met so many people in the development labs that if I have a specific question on some component, I can literally talk to somebody in the lab directly, and that's an interesting conversation to have. It's always great to be able to do that.
Yeah. What do you think that you would say to, a younger developer or technologist or, millennials aren't that young anymore. I mean, you're still young millennials, don't get me wrong, but, early and mid-career, we'll say, folks or early mid-career folks, like what's valuable to them about the IBM Champion program? Why should they care about it? And in fact, why should folks who are individual developers, as opposed to folks who are already at big enterprise Fortune 500 companies, why should they care about this program and what we're doing?
Well, I think that there will always be a need for people that want to help other people. And as I say, from a selfish point of view, you can look at it as career growth, career advancement, things that will help you remain relevant in your career, and certainly within IBM's purview, we're talking about information technology. If you want to be relevant, be working on fun stuff, do you want to do yet another file conversion, or some other old style job? Do you want to be working on the forefront? Get involved with the Champion program, get involved with new technology, and show an interest and learn.
And I think one other thing, and then I'll come to you, Lester. I think one other thing that I would answer to this is I have some folks on this call who are part of what we would consider more established, products or whatever. But, Martin, you do a lot of work. You're DB2 for ZOS. So let's just bring up mainframe for a second. Mainframe is huge, not only for folks who have been in technology for 30 years, but it's one of the largest growing areas for new developers and new technologists with the Master the Mainframe program and, the connection that they have to academia. There are a ton of opportunities for young, interested, hungry developers and technologists to get into, to access IBM technology, through open source, through mainframe, through all of these different areas. And then through that, you learn, you connect, you get, the next job, the next opportunity to share, and then poof, you're a champion. Lester, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say databases and the cloud and operating system are not limited to old guys or to, the Fortune 500. Everybody's using them. And this to me is the key point, is everybody's using these things. And so we all need to be interested in how they work.
Yeah. Data is, we've heard everyone say this, that data is, the one of the most valuable assets that a company has, and the knowledge of how to work with data, how to secure data, how to get insights out of data. That's not a Fortune 500 thing. That's an everybody thing. That's what creates disruption in any business or technology, is the knowledge of how is it being used now? How could we use it? How are people trying to use it, et cetera?
Well, I've got customers on the mainframe, with tens of thousands of employees, but I also work on Linux, Unix, and Windows, about 50-50, because I live 10 minutes west of the IBM Toronto lab where DB2 on Linux, Unix, Windows is developed. So I have a geographic advantage over many other people. And the smallest company I've worked with on a DB2 LUW project had 20 people in the company. And there are other places that are part of the auto supply chain, and they have to run SAP, and they run that on DB2 on AIX because Ford Motor Company requires that they do that. And you're talking with a company that has 100 people and maybe 6 people in IT, and you have to be able to help those people do what they need to do with their systems as well. So it's been a great ride. There's all sorts of things going on.
That's it. And I would add, especially for folks who are starting out in their careers, that it can sometimes be difficult to stand out and find a way to distinguish yourself from everybody else. And so if you have an opportunity within your firm to really dive into a product and show sufficient mastery and sufficient mentorship on it to become a champion, that is the kind of thing that opens doors both within the firm that you're in as well as opportunities in other firms.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing that I would say is, today's conversation, as I said at the beginning, we have 3 lifetime champions. So you folks, part of what gets someone to be a lifetime champion is long service. And so, that is definitely something that you folks listening and watching out there need to think about, these are not all of our champions. We have had, so before he became an IBMer, Tanmay Bakshi, who was one of the youngest Watson developers in the world, was an IBM champion for a couple of years because he was this deep expert doing amazing things with our technology that he was willing to share. We have folks at all levels of their companies, everywhere from developers and other like individual contributors as champions, all the way up through the C-level. And those folks are all different ages as well. We've got some C-level folks in, either smaller companies or disruptive areas who are, millennials, younger folks. But then we also have some folks who have been in the technology, for a long time. We have people who have changed careers. We have educators. We have a few students who are running user groups or student groups around some of the technology on their campuses. We have folks also from, I think, 12 at least technology areas around IBM. So that's everywhere from, the developer and open source to cloud to blockchain to security, storage, power, Zed, Watson IoT, every area within data and analytics, every area within integrating cloud into, the middleware and other applications that you've already got. So, what we have here is representative of a chunk of our program, but not representative of everything that we are. So in 2 weeks, on October 8th, we'll have another champion chat with 3 more lifetime champions. And those folks, Dusty Rivers and Bob Osterlin and Jackie Lynch, are all systems champions. So power and Zed and storage. And so we're going to have them on to talk about, again, not only the program like we've been talking about today, but how they learn and how they contribute and what user groups and what advances and why it's interesting and all of those kinds of things. We're just about at the top of the hour, and I want to give you folks one last chance to kind of do a little round robin conversation on, last thing you want to say, and last thing, I think the key that we want everyone to know is that, being someone who shares knowledge, being someone who cares about these products beyond just, okay, I did my job, I think that helps keep you evolving and learning and being happy in your jobs. So maybe a comment on that and any last things you want to say. We'll start with you, Martin, and go on through.
Well, I would just say it's been an interesting ride. I've been doing it a long time. I've enjoyed the entire process. There are very few things looking back through in terms of my IBM involvement I would have done a little differently. I've been very happy, and it has helped me be successful, as well as helping IBM. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Lester?
Well,
any final words?
I was going to say one of the key aspects of it, I think, is the global reach of this. And I realize you don't sort of quite see that here in this call, but when you have the bigger champion calls and you see people from all over the world, and a couple of the calls that you've done where, you can tell English is not their first language. I just absolutely love that. It's just like I love getting text messages. I wake up in the morning and it's sort of 6:30 or so. I look at all the email that comes in on my phone, and that's when you get messages from people who are just going to bed. And this is a great global community. I just want to end with that.
No, that's great. Absolutely.
And yeah, my little advice to anyone who's in this industry, or for that matter, really in any industry, but in particular in systems, is the recognition that you are a craftsman, and you are developing and creating something that you should have pride in. It should hold together. It should be long-lived. And if you are a master craftsman, there is pride and there is joy in building something that is bigger than yourself. And the IBM Champion Program gives you that exposure among a broad range of technologies and a broad range of technologists to make you successful in that regard.
Well, I don't think I could do any better at closing this call than what you three have just said. Let me tell everyone, as I said, we will have another champion chat in 2 weeks with some additional lifetime champions. The champion nominations will open if you want to suggest someone amazing to be part of this illustrious group, or if you want to nominate yourself, if you're the one who is sharing knowledge. And you'll find that at ibm.com/champion when it opens. We also have on the screen the ibm.biz URL. If you have additional questions for the program, for these champions, there is sort of a discussion forum over at IBM Community where I will post the replay, where we can connect with one another, where we can ask and answer.
Whoops, looks like somebody froze.
There we go.
Big download there. Are you back? Maybe not.
Well, the smile is there. That's important.
That's the smile. We caught her in the right moment, not with her tongue hanging out or something like that. That's I guess about as good as we're going to do.
Well, I'm Libby's support, Scott Lanningham, just in case she doesn't make it back. We hope she's safe and sound.
She's having a good time, if not.
Whatever's going on. Gentlemen, thank you. It's been a fantastic discussion. And I feel like I remember some of you from past conferences. I used to sit on a stage and interview people, and champions were many of those people. And all of your names sound familiar to me, and it's just great to hear your reflections on all of this. Thanks so much for participating with Libby today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, thank you everybody for tuning in. Libby, she may be rejoining to say goodbye. Here she is.
You're back.
Libby.
Crap, just everything crashed for a second. I'm so sorry.
You used some bad words. We're still live.
It's okay. I came on to say, let's all have a moment of silence to pray for Libby's safety. Hopefully a comet didn't hit her house or something, but you're okay. Can you hear us, Libby?
Maybe not.
I don't think she can. Well, we've come to the end of the broadcast, and thank you all again so much. Appreciate your time.
All the best. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.